She was 12 years old when a banker laughed and handed her a piece of paper he was sure was worthless. 3 years later, his entire $200 million project couldn't move a single truck without her permission. The call came in at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning, and Dale Fitch hadn't even touched his coffee. He was a junior partner at Hargrove and Caulfield, third floor, the kind of lawyer who handled paperwork nobody wanted to read. He answered because the caller ID said First Milburn Consolidated Bank. He stayed on the line because by the second sentence, his hand had stopped moving. The Wymer project was frozen. 17 subcontractors. 2 cranes. A $200 million commercial corridor already fenced and flagged and 3 weeks into groundbreaking, stopped cold because one 18-foot strip of gravel road was blocking every piece of equipment from reaching the site. Not the parcels. Not the buildings. Just the road in. The only road in. And the county clerk had confirmed it that morning. The strip was privately owned. Had been for 3 years. Owned by a 15-year-old girl named Elara Voss, who had never called anyone, never filed a complaint, and never once asked for money. She had simply waited. Dale set his coffee down and started making calls. 3 years earlier, Milburn County held its quarterly property auction in the gym of the old Civic Center on Route 9. Folding tables. Handwritten signs taped to the cinder block walls. A coffee pot on a card table near the door that had been burning the same batch since 6 in the morning. 12 people in the chairs. Maybe 14. Elara Voss sat in the third row with a spiral notebook on her knee. She was 12 years old. She was wearing her school jacket. Her father had dropped her off at 8:15 and told her he'd be back by noon. She had a pen clipped to the cover of the notebook and a bottle of water she hadn't opened. The auctioneer was a man named Purvis who read parcel numbers the way a man reads a grocery list, flat, even, fast. Parcels moved in blocks. Nobody lingered. Parcel 7C came up at 9:14. Purvis described it the way you'd describe a crack in a parking lot. 18 feet wide. Half a mile long. Access strip. Reclassified off the county road system in 1991. Taxes in arrears, $47. Assessed value 0. Nobody moved. A voice from the left side of the room filled the silence the way voices like that always do, loud, comfortable, certain it's welcome. Cord Hensler. He was the vice president of regional acquisitions at First Milburn Consolidated Bank. He had a pressed collar and a pocket square, and the particular posture of a man who had never once been told to wait. He was the one who had filed the parcel for auction in the first place. He'd been paying that $47 tax for 6 years, he said, and he was done carrying it. Nobody bid. Cord stood up, walked to the front table, picked up the parcel certificate, a single folded page, county seal in the corner, and turned around scanning the room. He found Elara. He walked over. He held out the certificate the way you'd hand a child a participation ribbon. "Keep it, sweetheart. Put it on your wall." 2 of the men near the back laughed. One shook his head. Purvis moved on to parcel 8A without blinking. Elara took the certificate. She didn't smile. She didn't look up at Cord. She just turned the page once, lengthwise, and pressed it flat inside the notebook. Cord was already heading back to his seat. He had already forgotten about her. That was his first mistake. Her father, Tom, picked her up at 11:40. He asked how it went. She said fine. He asked if anything interesting came up. She looked out the window and said not really. That evening, at the kitchen table, while her mother Diane was washing dishes and the radio was on low, Elara opened the notebook to a clean page. She wrote one thing at the top. Parcel 7C, April. Cord Hensler. Then she wrote a number underneath it, 1956. That was the year the original surveyor had platted the parcels on both sides of the strip. She had found the reference 3 weeks earlier, in a footnote on the county assessor's archived site, half a sentence buried in a description of a road improvement proposal that was later cancelled. She hadn't told anyone. She just wrote the year down, capped her pen, and closed the notebook. The strip of gravel Cord Hensler had laughed away connected two things. She knew what those things were. She knew what they were going to become. Nobody else in that gym had done the reading. Alara Voss had. And now she had the paper to prove it. Before this gets more unbelievable, hit subscribe and stay until the end. Because what Alara does next is something even the lawyers didn't see coming. A date stamped on a library card, October 14th, 7 months after the auction. The Millburn Public Library kept its county records in the back room behind the periodicals, 2 microfilm readers, a cabinet of rolled plat maps, and a terminal that flickered every time the heat kicked on. Most people never found the room. The ones who did usually left after 10 minutes. Alara came every other Saturday. She signed in under her own name. The librarian, Mrs. Tunstall, had stopped asking what she was looking for after the 3rd visit. By the 5th, she just handed Alara the keys to the map cabinet and went back to the front desk. Alara started with the 1954 County Surveyor's Index. Then the 1967 Road Maintenance Logs. Then the 1989 Plat Revisions, the ones that preceded the 1991 decision to pull Parcel 7C off the active county road list and reclassify it as a private access strip, no longer maintained, no longer mapped, no longer discussed. She wrote everything in the notebook. Dates. Filing numbers. Names of the surveyors. She drew small grids in the margins, hand-drawn parcel outlines, cross-referenced with the road maps from 3 different decades. She wasn't looking for a problem. She was looking for a pattern. It took 11 Saturdays to find it. The document was a supplemental plat addendum filed March 3, 1956, by a surveyor named O. Bertrand Hale. 1 page. Notarized. Tucked at the back of a folder that had not been requested since 1978, according to the checkout log clipped inside the cover. It described the access strip as a permanent vehicular easement. Not just an easement. An easement appurtenant, meaning it attached to the adjacent land, not to the person who owned it. Meaning it traveled with the deed. Meaning whoever eventually held the parcels on either side of that strip would carry the right to use it as a road. Or rather, would need to use it as a road. Because there was no other way in. Alara read the page 4 times. Then she asked Mrs. Tunstall for a photocopy. Then she walked outside into the October cold and stood next to her bike for a moment without moving. She had found it. That night, at the kitchen table, she unfolded a hand-drawn map she had been building for 3 months. It covered 2 full sheets of graph paper taped together. Parcel numbers in pencil. Roads in blue ink. The strip of 7C drawn in red, running like a seam between 2 blank spaces she had labeled Parcel A and Parcel B, the old plat names that had since been renumbered 3 times through routine county replats. The kettle was on. Diane set 2 cups down and looked at the map. That the same strip from the auction? Yes. Diane looked at the 2 blank spaces on either side of it. What's on those? Nothing yet. Diane nodded slowly. She poured the water. She didn't ask anything else. That was one of the things Alara loved about her mother. She didn't push. She just watched and waited to see if her daughter was right. She was. By March, 11 months after the auction, the trucks started showing up. Not on her strip. On the parcels beside it. Survey flags first. Orange ones, then blue. A man with a tripod who came 3 Tuesdays in a row. Then a white pickup with a magnetic logo on the door that Alara photographed from the road, Winemere Holdings LLC. She ran the name through the county incorporation database the following Saturday. It had been registered 4 months ago. The registered agent was a law firm in the capital. The managing partner was listed as a holding company. She looked up the holding company. 3 layers deep, it resolved to First Millburn Consolidated Bank. Cord Hensler's Bank. She wrote the LLC name in the notebook. Below it she wrote, 280 acres. Parcel A and Parcel B, now 44L and 44M. Commercial corridor, zoning reclassification filed November. Then she wrote, only vehicle access, Parcel 7C. Then she underlined it once. Just once. By summer, the purchases were done. The county had approved a preliminary zoning change. A regional newspaper ran a short article about a planned commercial development in Milburn County, retail, storage facilities, possibly light industrial. A rendering showed a wide access road, clean and paved, cutting in from Route 9. Elara looked at the rendering for a long time. She knew exactly where that access road would have to go. She taped the newspaper article to the inside back cover of the notebook. Below it she wrote one more line. They haven't looked yet. But they would. And when they did, they would find that the road they needed had been owned for over a year by a 13-year-old girl who had photocopied a 1956 document on a Saturday afternoon, while most of the town was watching football. The trap wasn't set yet. But the ground was ready. The knock came on a Thursday afternoon, sharp and confident, the kind of knock that expected the door to open immediately. Elara answered it. She was 14. She was holding a glass of water. She looked at the man on the porch, blue polo shirt, company logo, clipboard, and waited. His name was Brett. He worked for a regional land brokerage. He had a smile built for front porches, the kind that arrived before he did. He asked to speak with her parents. I'm the property owner. The smile shifted by about 3 degrees. Brett explained he represented a group of investors. A small parcel, nothing significant, just a strip of access land that wasn't doing much for anyone. He said investors twice and fair offer once. He held out a sheet with a number at the bottom. $8,000. He said it with the particular energy of a man who expected the number to end the conversation. Elara looked at the sheet. She asked if she could keep it. Brett said of course, absolutely, take your time. She thanked him, closed the door, and filed the sheet in the notebook. She did not call him back. The second offer came by phone, 6 weeks later. A man from the county assessor's office. Polite, measured, reading from something. He explained that the county was exploring a utility access reclassification for certain private strip parcels in the Milburn corridor. The process was routine, he said. Administrative. The compensation would be a credit of $1,200 against future tax obligations. Elara listened to the entire thing. Then she said, I'll need that in writing, please. The man paused. He said he'd send a letter. The letter arrived. It was 3 pages. It said routine 4 times. Elara showed it to Darlene, her mother's friend who had spent 19 years in county administration and now ran a consulting practice from her kitchen table. Darlene read it twice. They're trying to take the usage rights without buying the land. I know. You're 14. I know. Darlene looked at her for a moment. You want me to help you draft the response? I already wrote it. She had 2 pages. Cited the 1956 plat addendum by filing number. Cited her status as fee simple owner. Declined the reclassification. Kept a copy. Diane noticed, around this time, that Elara was mowing the strip twice a year. Once in May. Once in August. 18 feet wide, half a mile, a push mower on a Saturday morning, no one watching. She paid the annual property tax in March, $47, same as always, same envelope, same walk to the post office. She kept every receipt. Somewhere in a glass-walled conference room 2 counties away, a lawyer named Parks was on his 4th call of the day with the Winemere Holdings development team. The rendering had gone to the city council. The permits were in. The groundbreaking was 6 months out. Someone had finally looked at the access road. Parks typed a memo to the managing partner. Subject line, Parcel 7C, ownership. Attached was a county title search. The response came back in 12 minutes. How has this not been resolved? Parks poured himself a glass of water and didn't answer immediately. The 3rd offer came on a Saturday morning in October, 2 years and 8 months after the auction. Not an agent this time. Not a county official. Cord Hensler himself. He drove out in a black sedan. He came to the front door with a leather folder, and reading glasses he hadn't needed 3 years ago. Diane poured coffee. Cord sat at the kitchen table like a man who had sat at many kitchen tables and left with what he came for. He opened the folder. $47,000. He said it was more than generous. He said the land wasn't doing anything. He said Alara was a smart girl and she had a future ahead of her, and holding on to a gravel strip wasn't part of that future. Diane looked at Alara. Alara looked at the folder. Then she looked at Cord. "Thank you for coming in person." She thanked him for the coffee offer she hadn't made. She set her cup down. She folded her hands on the table. No. Cord stayed another 8 minutes trying angles. The folder stayed on the table. He left without it. Alara didn't open it. 3 weeks later, ground broke on the Wyndmere corridor. The crews came in from Route 9. The only access point ran directly across Parcel 7C. Nobody had called her. Nobody had asked? Her daughter. Alara had a memory from when she was 12, sitting at this same table, looking at the hand-drawn map for the first time. She had asked one question that night, not to her mother, just out loud, to no one in particular. "What does appurtenant mean?" Alara had told her. 4 sentences. The girl had nodded and gone back to her homework. That moment would matter. Not yet. But soon. The phone rang on a quiet Wednesday morning, 2 weeks after the crews started moving. Alara was at the kitchen table with her coffee. The number on the screen was a capital city area code. She didn't recognize it. She looked at it for one full ring. Then she picked up. "Miss Voss." The voice on the other end was smooth and deliberate, the voice of a man accustomed to being the last person to speak. "My client is prepared to offer $115,000 for an immediate, clean transfer of Parcel 7C. No conditions. 30-day close." Alara listened to the whole sentence. Then she said, "Tell your client I'll be in touch." She hung up before he could respond. She sat with her coffee for a moment. Then she opened the notebook to a fresh page and wrote the number down. $115,000. October. Parks. Below it she wrote one word. No. Nadia drove down that Saturday. She was Alara's cousin, 28, 4 months out of the bar exam, with the particular energy of someone who had recently realized how much bad paperwork exists in the world. She drove 3 hours and arrived with a messenger bag and a gas station coffee that had gone cold somewhere around the county line. She spread the permit file across the kitchen table. Next to it, the original deed. Next to that, the notebook, 3 years of entries, dates, filing numbers, the newspaper rendering, Brett's $8,000 letter, the county's 3-page utility letter, Cord's leather folder printout. She read in silence for 40 minutes. Diane put the kettle on. Alara sat across from Nadia and waited. Nadia looked up. "Did you know, when you took this, what it was?" "I knew what it could be." Nadia looked back at the 1956 plat addendum, the photocopy Alara had made at the library, now slightly soft at the fold from 3 years in the notebook. "This doesn't expire." "No. And they've been crossing it for 2 weeks without an agreement." 17 days. Nadia closed the folder. She looked at the kitchen table for a moment, then at Alara. "I'm going to make a call." Parks heard from Nadia on a Monday morning. She was calm, specific, and brief. Alara Voss was not selling. She was, however, open to a formal easement agreement, permanent, transferable, with monthly compensation structured against a commercial inflation index. If Wyndmere Holdings preferred to resolve this through the court, they were welcome to try. Nadia had 3 documents she was prepared to present. Parks called back within the hour. He pushed back on the monthly structure. He pushed back on the transferability clause. He asked twice if there was any number that would make a clean sale work. Nadia said no. The hearing was 3 weeks later. Parks led with abandonment. It was his best angle. The strip had sat in use for years, maintained by no one, documented nowhere in recent filings, effectively dead on the books no matter what a 1956 addendum said about permanence. He was methodical. He had exhibits. Nadia waited until he finished. Then she placed 3 documents on the table. The first, the 1956 plat addendum, filed by O. Bertrand Hale, notarized, permanent vehicular easement appurtenant to the adjacent parcels, surviving all subsequent replats. The second, a complete chain of titles showing continuous, uninterrupted property tax assessment on parcel 7C every single year since 1956, including the 6 years Cord Hensler had paid it, and the 3 years Elara had paid it, which under Milburn County statute constituted active maintenance of ownership and blocked any abandonment claim from forming. Parks's posture changed. Something behind his eyes recalculated. Nadia placed the third document. A $47 tax receipt. Paid by Cord Hensler. 3 years before the auction. In his own name, for a parcel he had publicly declared worthless and handed to a child as a joke. He had known it was a taxed private property. He had chosen to let it go. The parcel was never abandoned, Nadia said. It was released. Voluntarily. To my client. By the opposing party's principal, who has been fully aware of its status since before she was in possession of it. She said it in one breath. Then she sat down. The judge ruled in 4 minutes. Parks reached for his phone before he had finished gathering his papers. Nadia called Elara from the courthouse steps. We won the hearing. He wants to talk terms. Good. They're going to push on the monthly number. Let them. The final terms took 2 more calls. Monthly easement payment, $2,400. Indexed to commercial inflation. Permanent. Transferable in perpetuity to Elara's heirs. Wyndmere Holdings would carry all maintenance and legal costs related to the easement going forward. No lump sum option. No buyout clause. Parks accepted every term. Elara was in the kitchen when Nadia called to confirm. Diane was standing by the stove. Elara listened. She said 3 words. Okay. Thank you. She set the phone down. Diane turned around. She looked at her daughter for a moment. She didn't ask what the call was. She already knew, had known, quietly, for 3 years, the way some people know things without needing them explained. She turned back to the stove and put the kettle on. The signing was at the county clerk's office on a Thursday morning. Elara signed in blue ink. Nadia countersigned. Mrs. Pacheco, the same clerk who had been at the auction 3 years earlier, 4th row, 6 seats to the left, who had watched Cord Hensler hand a paper to a child and laughed along with the room, stamped the document. She looked at Elara before she filed it. She didn't say anything. She just nodded once. The kind of nod that carries weight. Elara walked to her truck. She sat for a moment. Then she opened the glove box and took out the notebook, the same one Diane had given her the summer before the auction, blue cover, spiral bound, corners soft from 3 years of coat pockets and kitchen tables and library chairs. She turned to the last page with writing. Below the line that said $115,000. October. Parks. No. She wrote one sentence. Parcel 7C, easement recorded. $2,400 per month. November. She capped the pen. She closed the notebook. Somewhere, Cord Hensler read a brief item in the Milburn County Business Digest. 1 paragraph. The Wyndmere project had finalized a permanent access easement with a private landowner. Terms were not disclosed. Development expected to proceed. He did not comment. The room that had laughed on a Tuesday morning 3 years earlier was now a half-assembled commercial corridor paying $2,400 every month. To the girl he had handed a worthless receipt across a row of folding chairs. Some men collect land. Elara Vaz collected patience. And patience, it turns out, compounds. Would you have taken the $115,000 that morning, or waited for the monthly deal that pays forever? Drop your answer below. And if you stayed until the end of this one, you already think like Elara.